textured titanium. That is a phrase that puts a tingle down my spine, down to my, nether regions, because I love textured titanium. I think a lot of us do. Most of us do. I think all of us, I don't know. If you're an exception, leave a comment, but I'm pretty sure all of us will prefer a textured titanium surface over just a plain smooth surface. Now, there's plenty of knives that I like a lot with a plain titanium surface. Just for example, the McNeese Mac II, and they have versions with texture. Mine just doesn't happen to have that. And I love this knife. But if I have the option, I'm going to prefer texture. It just kind of visually does a lot for the knife. And there's grip, too. It provides grip. So it's not only a looks thing, it's a actually practical thing as well. So here on the table I have examples of some of my favorite textures on titanium. And at the end I'm going to give you my top 3. So let's go through the knives here. This is just an orgasm of the eyes here. So let's start on the right hand side. This is the Brown Knives Cortex XL. And he does a couple patterns on his knives. This one, I forget what he calls. And I'm probably going to forget a lot of these, what they're called. But this one's really cool. It's kind of got the pinstriping going long ways, but then it has kind of the sunburst coming from this side. And something really cool he does is he continues that texture right over the clip. And it's perfectly lined up so that if you're looking from the top down, the texture is continued, unbroken. And then he mills out, or he doesn't mill the texture underneath the clip. So there's a perfectly rectangular spot underneath the clip where there's no texture. So this thing goes in and out of the pocket really, really nicely. So Brown Knives Cortex, really good texture. Not as grippy as some of the others here. It definitely provides some grip. However, visually, I think it's one of the best. Next up, this is just an example of some kind of very light sort of pinstriping. This is a TwoSun. Let me let Floki out. I should have let him out before I started the video, but he looks so comfortable. And of course, as soon as I start the video, then he gets up and he wants to go out. So hang on a second. All right. So you'll see this on a lot of knives. And it's just kind of a very basic, very light. I don't know what they really call it. I would call it like a pinstriping, I guess. But it's very light, but it does provide a little bit of grip. And visually, it breaks up the look of the knife a little bit. But if you're standing far away enough, or you're looking at it from far enough away, you can't even really see it. So, although I think this is better than no texture at all, I prefer these would be deeper or maybe further spaced apart or something to kind of bolden them up a little bit. Next up, Quiet Carry. Now, Quiet Carry has one of the best textures, in my opinion. It's more of a condensed kind of... it's not like a wide pattern. It's kind of a more close-knit pattern. And when you look closely, it kind of looks even cooler. It's more of like I would almost call this a knurling. And it's really nice and grippy. Not grippy to where it's like hurts, your hands when you rub across it, but it's really nice and grippy. The Drift series are made for wet environments. So this is a texture that would be really good if your hands were wet and you had to cut something. This is not going anywhere. Really, really lovely, lovely, lovely texture. This is a Drift XL, and it pops up in most of their knives. We have here the original Drift, same texture. Then we have the Quiet Carry 9, which has a little strip of that same texture right on this side and on the lock side as well. Really, really lovely, lovely texture. Next we have TRM's Lizard Skin texture. This is incredible. This is absolutely my number one favorite. So this is going to be in the top 3 as my number one favorite. It's just so beautiful how it starts at almost nothing and then slowly grows. These diamonds grow in size up as you go up the knife. Look at that. It's so tiny back there. And slowly gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And because it's a liner lock, not a frame lock, we have that full texture on both sides. Just beautiful, man. If you get a magnifying glass and look back here at the tiny ones, it's insane how small they get. It really is. Absolutely beautiful. Next, Hinderer. This is the same texture that you get on their G10 scales. This one is in titanium, but it's the same texture. And I think it's pretty good. It's definitely not that grippy. It's kind of grippy. It's not as grippy as the Drift. I would say it's, well, let's see. It's about as grippy as the Lizard Skin. Maybe even actually a little more grippy than the Lizard Skin. The Drift is going to be the grippiest here on the table, though, for sure. This one's kind of more of a wide pattern. It almost kind of makes me think of expanded metal. You know, like the metal you see on a barbecue grill. Kind of a cool look. And that is just on the show side. We have just a plain lock side. Unless you're looking at the Project X, and I believe that one has a textured lock side. Pretty cool texture. You know, the XM18 was kind of the first knife that I ever saw with textured titanium on Metal Complex's channel back when I was first getting into knives. I used to watch his channel a lot, and he had these scales on most of his Hinderers. They were the shiny ones, not this working finish. But man, I really coveted those things. Next, we have a Spyderco Little Native. And now this is a fluted titanium scale from Rips Garage Tech. This is another example of something with a kind of a tiny, tiny pattern expanding into something larger. I don't know what they call this. Maybe a sunburst, fluted sunburst, or I don't know, maybe just fluted. But it's really cool. Back in here where it's tiny, it's really, really tiny. And then it just sunbursts out. This one doesn't provide very much grip at all. But it just looks really cool. Really, really cool. This is such a cool, compact, little premium feeling knife with these titanium scales on it. I really recommend you get these for your Little Native, or really whatever. But the Little Native especially, for some reason, just feels so classy in this little package with these titanium scales. It feels really nice. Next we have the Rosie, the Oz Machine Company Roosevelt. They offer a lot of different patterns. This one is the radial pattern, and it's the full dark stonewash. And this is a really cool pattern. It's kind of emanating from the pivot here. So we have circles around the pivot that kind of reverberate out, sort of like if you threw a pebble into a pond, you know, that kind of ripple effect. I think it looks really neat. Really neat. Especially with this dark stonewash on everything. It just really kind of brings it all together. I was looking at the knife earlier, a couple days ago, and I saw all these little scratches in it. There's like one big one across here, right here. And they're so hidden. You don't even really see them unless you're in certain lights. So if you're going to have a user Rosie, I would recommend this finish for sure. This one provides a pretty decent amount of grip. You know, they're deep enough to where the skin of your finger can kind of push down in there and get a grip. So yeah, very much like this one. Here's an interesting one. This is the Kizer Veritas, a Lundquist design. And this is interesting because it's just all a bunch of little triangles. And I always thought it looked really cool. Not very much grip at all. Almost, if you're running your finger across it, almost feels smooth, actually. The milling is not very deep on these triangles. But I always liked how they had one single one left up here. I just thought that was a cool touch. And another really cool touch is the texture goes over this pocket clip filled tab. Really the only reason you can tell it's there is because it's kind of darker. But isn't that cool how that pattern continues right over that little tiny tab? I think that was really cool. It's on both sides too. So that's a really cool texture. And then we have the Grimsmo Rask with the, I don't know what they call it, sunburst maybe. This is a similar sunburst to maybe like this, but it's going from top down instead of kind of from the side. It gets tiny. It basically disappears into nothing. Somewhere around right here, in certain likes, you can actually kind of see the line where it ends. But you have to look very closely because they get so tiny. Isn't that cool? Such precision milling. And then that's a pattern also continued on the clip. Kind of similar to the Cortex. Really cool pattern. And again, Grimsmo does a few different patterns. This is one of my favorites. So these are all the textures in my collection. I know there's more out there. So my number one favorite is going to be the lizard skin titanium from TRM. This is the best. This is the best texture. Now, I'm not really rating it for grippiness. I'm just rating it for mostly looks, honestly. All of these provide enough grip for me. I don't work with wet hands or oily hands or anything like that very often, so I don't need a ton of grip. I like it, but I'm more talking about looks here. I think next, Quiet Carry is going to be in the top 3. I don't know if they're number 2 or 3. The Quiet Carry needs to be in there. It's just such a cool texture. It's such a cool looking texture, and it's so functional too. Like, it really is nice to the touch. And it just looks so cool. So Quiet Carry's in there as well. And I think for the third spot, I might have to go with the Rask. As far as like an impressive standpoint, like from a machining standpoint, this is impressive because it just disappears and gets so tiny that you can't even tell where it ends. That's really cool. Gosh, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'll say Rask. I think the Rask is just really cool how it disappears like that. They could have started wider out here and then had them end at the very top, but that wouldn't be as cool, I don't think. Just to see them fade out to nothing is really, really neat. So there you go. There's some of my favorite textures. What do you guys think? What are some textures that I missed, maybe? Maybe you have one in your collection that's really good. Let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. Like the video. Thank you.